The drama surrounding this fight wasn't just about a championship belt. It was about legacy, loyalty, and the brutal reality of boxing where idols sometimes have to face the fighters who once admired them. On one side stood a legend, a man who had already carved his name deep into the history of the sport. On the other stood a younger, undefeated contender whose dream required defeating the very hero he had grown up watching. Inside the arena in Carson, California, the atmosphere carried an almost mystical energy. Nonito Donaire had described this venue as magical, a place where unforgettable moments seemed to unfold. Over the years, the arena had witnessed many of his triumphs, but tonight felt different. Tonight, he would defend his WBC bantamweight title against fellow Filipino Reymart Gaballo, a rising star with youth, power, and the hunger to make history. For Gaballo, this was more than a fight. This was the opportunity that could change his life forever. Reymart Gaballo entered the ring with an undefeated record of 24 wins and no losses, with 20 of those victories coming by knockout. The young fighter from General Santos City carried the nickname the Assassin, and his reputation was built on explosive power and relentless confidence. At just 25 years old, he was seen as one of the brightest prospects in the bantamweight division. The WBC interim champion had climbed the rankings with authority, and now he stood as the #1 contender. But the man standing across from him wasn't just another opponent. Nonito Donaire was already a legend. Known worldwide as the Filipino Flash, he had spent more than 2 decades battling the best fighters across multiple weight classes. His record spoke volumes: over 40 wins, 27 knockouts, and a career that had spanned generations of champions. At 39 years old, he had already achieved more than most fighters could dream of: world titles in 4 different divisions, and a reputation as one of the most dangerous punchers in boxing history. This fight marked his 21st world title appearance. Age, however, had become the topic many analysts couldn't stop discussing. In boxing, youth often carries the advantage. Speed fades, reflexes slow, and younger fighters eventually come to claim the throne from aging champions. But Donaire had heard these doubts before. He had already broken records as the oldest bantamweight champion in history, and he insisted he was a better fighter now than he had been in his 20s. Experience had sharpened his instincts, discipline had refined his power, and the legendary left hook that had ended so many careers still carried devastating force. As the fighters stood in the ring awaiting the opening bell, there was a quiet moment when they were offered the chance to touch gloves. It was a symbolic gesture, respect between 2 Filipino warriors who shared the same roots, the same culture, and the same fighting spirit. But once the bell rang, respect would give way to battle. The opening round began cautiously, but the tension was undeniable. Gaballo wasted no time testing the champion's defenses, launching powerful shots as he looked to prove he belonged on the world stage. Early in the round, he landed a thunderous right uppercut that drew an immediate reaction from the crowd. It was a clear demonstration of the power that had fueled his undefeated run. But Donaire barely flinched. Instead, the veteran stepped forward, delivering a left hook to the body in response. The exchange revealed something important right away. Gaballo had the youth and power, but Donaire had the composure of a seasoned champion. As the first round continued, both fighters began finding their rhythm. Gaballo tried to pressure forward with combinations, but Donaire responded with precise counters. At one point, the champion fired a sharp lead right hand that split Gaballo's guard cleanly. It was the kind of punch only experience could produce, timed perfectly, delivered with calm confidence. By the end of the round, the message was clear. Gaballo might have youth on his side, but Donaire still possessed the skills and timing that had defined his legendary career. The second round intensified the action. Gaballo came forward with renewed aggression, throwing jabs and combinations as he searched for openings. He had never been knocked down in his professional career, and he fought with the confidence of someone who believed his moment had arrived. But Donaire remained patient. Rather than chasing the younger fighter, he began using feints and subtle footwork to create opportunities. He doubled up on his jab, occasionally stepping in with a sharp right hand. The veteran knew exactly how to slow the pace and control the flow of the fight. commentators began noting something fascinating. Donaire wasn't relying solely on his famous left hook. Instead, he was mixing in right hands and counters, adapting his style to keep Gaballo guessing. The fight was becoming a chess match. Yet, as the rounds progressed, the younger challenger began finding moments of success. Early in the third round, Gaballo unleashed a powerful right hand that rocked Donaire and pushed him backward. The crowd erupted as the champion briefly found himself under pressure. For a moment, it looked like the tide might be turning. Gaballo followed up with another sharp jab, pressing forward with confidence. The younger fighter's speed and energy were starting to show, and Donaire had to rely on his defensive instincts to avoid taking serious damage. But champions rarely panic. Instead of retreating, Donaire began bouncing lightly on his feet, waiting for the perfect moment to counter. When Gaballo stepped in again, the veteran fired a quick left hook upstairs, reminding everyone why that punch had become one of the most feared weapons in boxing. The round turned into a thrilling exchange, with both fighters landing heavy shots. Gaballo's youth and aggression were undeniable, but Donaire's counters carried frightening precision. By the end of the round, a small cut had opened on Donaire's face. It was a reminder that the fight was far from easy. And yet, something about the champion's calm demeanor suggested he was still in control. As the fourth round began, the atmosphere inside the arena shifted. The fight had already produced several intense exchanges, and both men seemed determined to prove they deserved victory. Gaballo continued pressing forward, landing jabs and combinations as he tried to maintain momentum. He even slipped in a right hand that caught Donaire cleanly. It was for a brief moment seemed like the younger fighter might be gaining confidence. But boxing often turns on a single moment. Midway through the round, Donaire subtly changed his approach. He began sitting down on his punches more, driving power through each shot rather than relying solely on speed and timing. Then, in an instant, everything changed. Donaire unleashed a devastating left hook to the body. The punch landed perfectly on Gaballo's liver. At first, the challenger tried to remain standing, but within seconds, the pain became unbearable. His body betrayed him, and he collapsed to the canvas for the first time in his professional career. The crowd erupted in shock. Body shots like that don't just hurt, they paralyze the body. Fighters often describe them as waves of pain that shut down the body completely. Gaballo tried to rise. He managed to get to his feet, showing incredible determination, but the damage was done. The delayed reaction from the liver shot overwhelmed him, and he collapsed back to the canvas again. The referee began the count, but everyone in the arena already knew what had happened. The champion's legendary left hook had struck again. For Donaire, it was a familiar weapon. The same punch had launched his career into stardom years earlier when he knocked out Vic Darchinyan in 2007 with a devastating left hook. Since then, that punch had become a nightmare for opponents across multiple weight classes. And now, more than a decade later, it had delivered another dramatic finish. As the referee waved off the fight, the arena erupted in cheers. Nonito Donaire had done it again. At 39 years old, the Filipino Flash had